I was driving past my son-in-law's house and decided to check on him, but when I saw my wife's car at the gate, a shiny silver Lexus that should have been in our garage, my heart clenched with a premonition of trouble. Something's wrong, I thought, and I quietly approached the window, trying not to give myself away. What I heard inside destroyed and changed my world forever. When the old fool finally signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned for. Victoria's voice drifted through the half-open window like poison in my veins. I sat frozen in my car outside Emily's house, keys still dangling from the ignition. 5 minutes ago, I'd called my daughter to surprise her with dinner plans. "Sorry, Dad, I'm not home, but Marcus is there working on some case files," she'd said cheerfully. Yet here was Victoria's silver Lexus parked brazenly in the driveway. I killed the engine and approached the window on trembling legs. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see them clearly, my wife of 25 years lounging on my daughter's couch like she owned the place, and Marcus leaning against the bookshelf with that smug expression I'd grown to despise. "The timeline's perfect," Marcus was saying, his lawyer voice crisp with satisfaction. "File in June, claim irreconcilable differences. With the new Iowa statutes, Victoria's entitled to half of everything acquired during marriage, plus spousal support for life." Victoria laughed, that tinkling sound I'd once found charming. "The construction business alone is worth $12 million. Add the rental properties, the vacation home, investments, we're looking at nearly $20 million total." My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone, hitting record just as Marcus continued his legal dissertation. "The beautiful part is his trusting nature. Richard has no idea we've been documenting his assets for months. Bank statements, property deeds, business valuations, everything's already copied." He gestured toward a manila folder on the coffee table. He practically handed us the keys to his kingdom. 25 years of playing the devoted wife, Victoria said, examining her manicured nails. Pretending to care about his boring construction stories, nodding sympathetically when he worried about payroll. "God, the man actually believes I love him." A twig snapped under my foot. Both of them froze mid-conversation, heads turning toward the window like startled deer. I pressed myself against the brick wall, heart hammering against my ribs, sweat beading despite the April chill. "Did you hear something?" Victoria's voice carried a note of suspicion. "Probably just the neighbor's cat," Marcus replied after a pause. "You're paranoid. Can you blame me? If Richard discovered this before we're ready." "He won't. The men couldn't spot a conspiracy if it wore a neon sign." Marcus's laughter held nothing but contempt. "By September, you'll be divorced, wealthy, and free to do whatever you want with whoever you want." I forced myself to stay hidden until their conversation resumed, my phone capturing every venomous word. When I finally crept back to my car 15 minutes later, my entire world had shifted on its axis. 25 years of marriage, reduced to a legal strategy session between my wife and son-in-law. The folder on that coffee table haunted me, months of planning, documentation, preparation. While I'd been working 16-hour days to build our future, they'd been systematically mapping its destruction. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at my hands wrapped around the steering wheel, the same hands that had built a construction empire from nothing, that had provided every comfort Victoria enjoyed, that had walked her down the aisle when her own father refused to attend our wedding. Victoria's voice echoed in my memory, "The man actually believes I love him." The worst part? Until 30 minutes ago, I absolutely did. The front door opened just as I reached for my car keys. Victoria emerged first, her designer handbag swinging casually at her side, followed by Marcus adjusting his tie with practiced precision. Neither expected to find me sitting in my Honda, and the shock registered on Victoria's face like a slap. "Richard." Her voice climbed an octave. "What are you doing here?" I forced my expression into something resembling normalcy, though my pulse thundered in my ears. 25 years of marriage had taught me to read her moods, but apparently she'd been acting the entire time. "Just finished a job site inspection nearby," I lied smoothly, climbing out of the car. "Thought I'd stop by and see Emily." Marcus stepped protectively closer to Victoria, his lawyer instincts kicking in. Those pale gray eyes studied my face with uncomfortable intensity, searching for cracks in my story. "She's not here," Victoria said quickly. "We were just..." I was helping Marcus organize some legal documents for a client. The lie rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. How many lies had I swallowed over the years without question? "Oh, I kept my voice light, conversational. I thought you'd be at work until 6 today. Didn't you mention something about the Henderson proposal this morning? A flicker of panic crossed her features. I left early. Headache. Sorry to hear that. I turned to Marcus with manufactured friendliness. Working on an interesting case. Asset division, he replied without thinking, then caught himself. For a divorce client. Very complex financial situation. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't destroying my life. Victoria's eyes darted between Marcus and me, calculating. How long have you been here, Richard? Just pulled up. Why? No reason, but her smile looked painted on. You seem tense. Everything okay? The woman who'd plotted my financial ruin for months was asking about my well-being. I almost laughed. Long day, you know how it is. I gestured toward Marcus. Don't let me interrupt your work session. We were just finishing up, Marcus said, his hand settling possessively on Victoria's lower back. The gesture seemed automatic, intimate. How long had that been happening? Good timing, then. I pulled out my phone to check the time, making sure they could see the device. Neither reacted, but I caught Marcus's eyes lingering on the screen. I should head home anyway. Dinner won't cook itself. Victoria's laugh sounded forced. I'll be along shortly. Just need to wrap up a few things here. Take your time. I opened my car door, then paused as if remembering something. Oh, Victoria, Dr. Patterson's office called about rescheduling your physical. Something about a conflict with your work schedule. Her face went blank for a split second, the look of someone whose lie had been exposed. Then she recovered with impressive speed. Must be a mix-up. I'll call them later. No worries. These things happen. I slid into the driver's seat, heart hammering. See you both later. As I backed out of the driveway, I watched them in my rearview mirror. They stood frozen until my car disappeared around the corner, then immediately moved closer together, heads bent in urgent conversation. The three-way dance of deception was complete. They suspected I might have overheard something. I knew they were planning to destroy me, and all of us were pretending everything was perfectly normal. Victoria would drive home separately, armed with explanations for her early departure from work and her presence at Marcus's house. She'd probably arrived at a dozen reasonable justifications by the time she walked through our front door. But she didn't know about the recording on my phone, 43 minutes of crystal-clear audio that would change everything. I pulled into traffic, hands steady on the wheel for the first time in an hour. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder and more focused. They thought they were playing chess with a checkers player. They were about to discover their mistake. The 15-minute drive home passed in a blur of traffic lights and muscle memory. My Honda found its way into our circular driveway without conscious direction, past the manicured gardens Victoria insisted we pay someone else to maintain, past the fountain she'd commissioned for our 20th anniversary. I sat in the car for several minutes, staring at the house I'd built with my own hands in 1995. Every board, every nail, every carefully planned detail had been a love letter to the woman who was now plotting to steal it from me. The front door opened into silence that felt different now, not peaceful, but hollow. Victoria's presence had always filled these rooms with chatter about her day, complaints about neighbors, excitement over new purchases. Now I wondered how much of it had been performance. The wedding photo on the mantel caught my eye first. December 15, 1987. Victoria radiant in ivory silk, me awkward in a rented tuxedo, both of us glowing with what I believed was genuine happiness. She'd been 22, working as a secretary at Morrison & Associates downtown. I was 37, my construction business finally turning real profit after 10 years of 12-hour days and instant noodle dinners. We'd met at the company Christmas party that year. Morrison was a client, I'd renovated their offices the previous spring. Victoria had laughed at my terrible joke about concrete mixers, a sound like silver bells that made my chest tighten with unexpected longing. When I asked her to dinner, she'd blushed and said yes so quickly I wondered if she'd been waiting for me to ask. Our first date at Romano's Italian restaurant stretched until midnight. She listened with genuine interest as I described my dreams of building something lasting, something that would outlive us both. Her eyes sparkled when I talked about the houses I wanted to create, the families I wanted to shelter. You're not just building structures, she'd said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You're building homes." I'd proposed 6 months later. The kitchen table held our 25th anniversary card from last December. Victoria's handwriting still elegant in blue ink. "To my wonderful husband, thank you for making all my dreams come true. Here's to 25 more years of happiness. All my love, Victoria." All her love. The phrase tasted bitter now. I moved to the living room where Emily's baby pictures lined the built-in shelves I'd crafted during Victoria's pregnancy. June 8, 1995, the day our daughter was born. Victoria, exhausted but radiant, holding our red-faced miracle like she'd been created for motherhood. Those first years had been the happiest of my life. Victoria threw herself into being a mother with the same intensity she'd once brought to planning our wedding, parent-teacher conferences, soccer games, birthday parties with elaborate themes. She documented every moment with fierce maternal pride. "You're the best father in the world," she told me the night Emily graduated high school, tears streaming down her face as we watched our daughter accept her diploma. "She's going to do incredible things because of the foundation you gave her." The foundation I gave her, not we. Had the cracks been showing even then? I sank into my leather recliner, the one Victoria always complained was too ugly for the formal living room, and let the memories wash over me. Our 10th anniversary cruise to Alaska, Victoria genuinely delighted by the glaciers and wildlife. Emily's college graduation, all of us crying as she walked across the stage with her psychology degree. Christmas mornings filled with laughter and chaos, Victoria insisting on elaborate decorations that took weeks to install and one day to dismantle. When had gratitude transformed into entitlement? When had, "Thank you for providing this life," become, "We deserve so much more"? The recording on my phone held the answer. Victoria hadn't loved me in years, possibly decades. Every kiss, every anniversary celebration, every "I love you" whispered in the darkness had been calculated manipulation designed to keep me working, earning, building wealth she could eventually claim as her own. 25 years of my life reduced to a legal strategy session. I sat in the growing darkness of our living room, surrounded by the evidence of what I believed was a happy marriage, and felt something cold and analytical settling over the grief. Victoria thought she was playing the long game, positioning herself for maximum financial gain while maintaining plausible deniability. She had no idea her husband possessed the same strategic mind that had built a construction empire from nothing. The game was about to change. The living room silence wrapped around me as I forced myself to think like the businessman I'd always been. When had Victoria's behavior shifted from genuine partnership to calculated positioning? The answer came with uncomfortable clarity, 2020, when Sterling Construction landed the Morrison Municipal Center contract. $50 million over 3 years, the largest project in company history. I'd come home that April evening expecting celebration, maybe champagne, definitely the enthusiastic support that had sustained me through every previous milestone. Instead, Victoria had been sitting at the kitchen table with a real estate magazine and a calculator. "This means we can finally afford the house on Elm Street," she'd announced without looking up. "The one with the circular driveway and the pool. The Hendersons are asking $4.2 million. Not congratulations on the achievement. Not pride in the work that would employ 300 people for 3 years. Just immediate focus on what my success could buy her. Victoria, I haven't even started the project yet. There's design work, permits, subcontractor negotiations. But the money is guaranteed, right?" She'd finally looked at me then, her green eyes calculating. "I mean, once you sign the contract, the city has to pay." The conversation had lasted 2 hours. She'd mapped out expenditures down to the last detail: the new house, country club membership, luxury cars, European vacations. Not our expenditures, hers. The pronouns had been telling, though I'd been too focused on project logistics to notice. By 2021, the demands had escalated. The country club membership became non-negotiable when the Pattersons joined Riverside Hills. Our perfectly adequate vacation cabin in Wisconsin became embarrassing compared to the Johnsons' place in Aspen. Victoria began dropping hints about other wives whose husbands really understood how to treat a woman. The physical intimacy disappeared gradually, so slowly I attributed it to age and stress. Separate bedrooms became necessary because of my snoring, though Victoria had never complained about snoring in 23 years of marriage. Dinner conversations shifted from discussions of our day to Victoria's detailed accounts of what other families owned, achieved, or displayed. Sarah Mitchell's husband bought her a Mercedes for their anniversary, she'd mentioned last month, cutting her salmon with surgical precision. Just because he appreciated everything she'd sacrificed for their marriage. Sacrificed, as if supporting my career while living in luxury had required significant personal loss. The friendship with Marcus had intensified after Emily's wedding in September 2023. Suddenly, Victoria was fascinated by legal proceedings, asking hypothetical questions about property division and spousal rights for a friend who might need advice. She'd started receiving phone calls that sent her to the other room, claiming they were book club discussions or volunteer committee meetings. How many of those calls had been conspiracy sessions? I pulled out my phone and replayed segments of today's recording. Marcus's voice: "We've been documenting his assets for months." Victoria's laughter: "25 years of playing the devoted wife." The documentation made sense now. Victoria's sudden interest in my financial reports, her questions about business valuations, her insistence on joint accounts while maintaining her own separate credit cards. She'd been conducting reconnaissance while I'd been building the very empire she planned to steal. But Victoria had made a crucial error in her strategic planning. She'd underestimated the men who'd built Sterling Construction from a single truck and a borrowed tool set. The same analytical mind that had navigated 35 years of construction projects, labor negotiations, and municipal contracts was now focused on a different kind of problem solving. They thought they were playing chess with someone who didn't know the rules. Victoria had spent months positioning her pieces while assuming I'd never noticed the board. She was about to discover that her husband understood strategy better than she'd ever imagined. I stood up from the recliner and walked to my home office where files containing 35 years of business records lined built-in shelves, tax returns, contracts, partnership agreements, property deeds, everything Victoria thought she'd been secretly documenting. But I knew something she didn't. The real assets weren't in those files. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed: Harrison Webb, my accountant, my friend, and the only person who knew about the offshore arrangements I'd established years ago for tax optimization purposes. Time to make a call that would change everything. 3 days of methodical research had transformed my home office into a war room. 2 laptops hummed quietly on the mahogany desk I'd built 15 years ago, their screens displaying bank statements, legal databases, and property records. Yellow legal pads covered every surface, filled with columns labeled assets, weaknesses, timeline, and leverage points. I'd shaved carefully that morning, put on my best navy suit, and slipped on the reading glasses Victoria always said made me look distinguished. Strange how quickly grief could crystallize into strategy when you had 35 years of business experience to draw from. Harrison Webb had been more helpful than I dared hope. 3 offshore accounts I'd established years ago for tax optimization, completely legal, fully documented, but invisible to anyone without forensic accounting skills. Victoria's amateur reconnaissance mission had missed the real treasure. She'd been cataloging the visible kingdom while the crown jewels remained hidden in plain sight. But Victoria had been busy too. Her credit card statements told a fascinating story: $47,000 in unauthorized transfers over 8 months, funneled to a joint savings account I'd never opened. The beneficiary name made my jaw clench: Marcus Thompson. They'd been positioning themselves as financial partners long before their divorce conspiracy began. Luxury lunches at Riverside Country Club, $300 spa treatments, designer clothing purchases that coincided suspiciously with her book club meetings. Every expense painted a picture of a woman preparing for a different life. The $800 Hermes handbag she'd bought last Tuesday carried particular irony given that she'd complained about grocery costs just that morning. Marcus's vulnerabilities proved even more illuminating. My construction industry contacts had been generous with information about Davenport's most ambitious attorney. The man who planned to steal my fortune was drowning in debt, $180,000 in student loans, an $8,500 monthly office lease chosen for image over prudence, and a growing reputation for cutting ethical corners when payment schedules got tight. Thompson's a sharp lawyer, Jim Morrison from Morrison Concrete had told me over coffee, but he's got champagne tastes on a beer budget. Owes 3 of my subcontractors nearly $25,000 total. Always promises payment next week, then disappears when the bills come due. The State Bar Association's website revealed 2 dismissed ethical complaints in the past year, both involving client fund mismanagement. Dismissed, but documented. In legal circles, even unsuccessful complaints left stains on professional reputations. I leaned back in my leather chair, surveying the intelligence gathered over 72 hours of patient investigation. Victoria and Marcus had underestimated their opponent catastrophically. They'd seen a trusting husband who worked long hours and rarely questioned household expenses. They'd failed to recognize the analytical mind that had built Sterling Construction from a single truck into a $12 million enterprise. The phone rang, jarring me from my strategic reverie. Emily's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, sweetheart." I kept my voice warm, normal. "How's your day going?" "Dad, I need to ask you something." Her tone carried the careful neutrality she used with troubled patients. "Is everything okay between you and Mom lately? There's been this weird tension whenever I'm around both of you." My hand tightened on the phone. How much did she know? How much had Marcus told her about their conspiracy? "What makes you ask?" "Little things. Mom seems stressed about money, which is strange since business has been so good. And Marcus keeps asking weird questions about your company structure, like how the partnerships work and who controls what assets." She paused. "It feels like they're fishing for information, but I can't figure out why." Fishing for information. My daughter's psychology training had detected the predatory behavior her mother and husband thought they'd hidden. "Probably just curiosity about how the business world works," I said carefully. "Your mom's always been interested in financial security." "Maybe." But Emily didn't sound convinced. "Dad, if something was wrong, I mean, really wrong, you'd tell me, right?" The question hung between us like a loaded weapon. Tell her what? That her mother was planning to destroy me financially. That her husband was orchestrating the whole conspiracy. That the family she'd trusted her entire life was built on lies. Of course, sweetheart. But everything's fine. Just the usual business pressures. After we hung up, I sat staring at my research notes. Marcus had been pumping my daughter for information about my business structure. The scope of their intelligence-gathering operation was broader than I'd realized. Time to make sure they got exactly the information I wanted them to have. I was still processing Emily's warning about Marcus's fishing expedition when my secure phone line rang. Sarah Chen, my accountant for 12 years, her voice crisp with professional efficiency. "Richard, I've got the asset protection documents ready for signature. When you mentioned wanting to update estate planning, I took the liberty of researching optimal structures." A pause. "This is about more than estate planning, isn't it? How perceptive of you. 28 years in forensic accounting teaches you to read between the lines. Should I ask what kind of threat we're protecting against?" "The domestic variety." Sarah's silence spoke volumes. She'd handled 3 divorces for my construction crew supervisors. She knew the landscape. "I'll have everything ready by noon," she said. "The business assets will be completely insulated from any personal legal action. Whoever's planning to take a run at your personal finances won't even see the real money." By 10 o'clock that morning, I was sitting across from Tom Bradley, president of First National Bank and my golf partner for 15 years. The mahogany conference room smelled of coffee and leather, familiar territory where I'd negotiated dozens of construction loans. "Account security review," I said, sliding documents across the polished table. "I need all joint access points verified and temporarily frozen pending identity confirmation." Tom's eyebrows rose slightly. "This is comprehensive, Richard. Every joint account, credit line, and automatic payment system. Every single one." "May I ask?" "You may not." But I smiled when I said it. "How long for the security holds to take effect?" "Immediately upon your signature. All account holders will receive notification that access requires in-person verification with photo ID and secondary documentation." Tom studied my face. "This is going to inconvenience Victoria significantly." "I'm counting on it." The security holds activated at 11:47 a.m., just as Victoria was sitting down for her weekly lunch at Riverside Country Club with 3 other construction wives. My phone buzzed with the first decline transaction at 12:03 p.m. I was reviewing contractor bids when Victoria's panicked call came at 12:50. "Richard, something's wrong with our accounts. My card was declined at lunch, and when I called the bank, they said there's a security hold. Do you know anything about this?" Perfect innocence. No mention of the joint account with Marcus's name. No acknowledgement of the missing $47,000. No admission that she'd been moving money without my knowledge. Security hold. That sounds serious. Did they say what triggered it? Something about verifying identity and account access. It's embarrassing, Richard. I'm sitting here with Linda and Susan and Janet, and I can't even pay for my own lunch. The distress in her voice was genuine, not because her conspiracy was threatened, but because her social status had been publicly compromised. After 25 years of marriage, I knew Victoria's priorities. I'll call Tom Bradley immediately, I assured her. We'll get this sorted out. But I didn't call Tom. Instead, I drove to the construction site where my crew was pouring foundation for the new medical center. The familiar sounds of machinery and worker voices felt grounding after 3 days of financial warfare. My phone buzzed with text messages throughout the afternoon. Victoria, 1:47 p.m., still can't access any accounts. This is ridiculous. Victoria, 2:23 p.m., Tom Bradley's secretary says he's in meetings all day. What kind of bank president is too busy for his best customers? Victoria, 3:15 p.m., even our emergency credit line is frozen. How am I supposed to buy groceries? Each message brought grim satisfaction. For 25 years, Victoria had taken financial security for granted while I worked 60-hour weeks to provide it. Now she was experiencing what it felt like when that security vanished without warning. Marcus's reaction proved even more interesting. At 4:30 p.m., my private investigator, Mike Rodriguez, called with an update. Thompson tried to access his shared account with your wife 3 times this afternoon. When that failed, he attempted to withdraw funds from what appears to be a trust account, probably your daughter's education fund that he manages. That one's frozen too, per your instructions. His demeanor. Angry phone calls to bank representatives. Threats about legal action. Demands to speak with management. Classic overconfident attorney discovering his leverage has evaporated. By 6 p.m., I was home, reviewing the day's financial battlefield from my office. Every shared account frozen, every joint credit line suspended, every automatic payment system requiring my personal authorization. Victoria's access to 25 years of accumulated wealth had been reduced to whatever cash she carried in her purse. The security measures were completely legal, a husband protecting marital assets pending estate planning review. Tom Bradley would confirm that standard banking protocols had been followed precisely. But Victoria and Marcus would understand the message perfectly. The man they'd planned to financially ambush was no longer playing defense. My phone rang at 6:47 p.m. Victoria's number, but the voice that answered would be desperate now, not manipulative. Time to see how quickly conspirators turned on each other when their plans started crumbling. The after-hours security guard at Thompson & Associates barely looked up as Victoria rushed through the lobby at 7:15 p.m., her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. I knew this because Mike Rodriguez had positioned himself in the coffee shop across the street with a clear view of the building entrance. The frantic call Victoria had made from our driveway, "Marcus, we need to talk immediately. Something's gone terribly wrong," had been loud enough for our next-door neighbor to overhear. Not that Victoria cared about discretion anymore. On the 14th floor, Marcus's corner office glowed with emergency session intensity. Through his window, anyone with binoculars could see 2 figures hunched over a conference table covered with documents, their body language screaming crisis management. He knows. Victoria's voice carried through the building's older ventilation system to the accounting firm next door, where Mike's contact maintained an office. Richard knows something, and he's cutting off everything. I couldn't even buy gas for my car. Marcus's response was sharp, professional, his litigation voice engaged. The timing isn't coincidental. 3 days ago, you said he showed up unexpectedly at Emily's house right when we were discussing strategy. He must have overheard something. How much could he have heard? Enough to understand we're not playing around. Papers rustled as Marcus reviewed documents. Victoria, we need to assume he recorded our conversation. Everything we said about assets, timeline, strategy, all of it potentially documented. The silence that followed spoke volumes. 2 conspirators realizing their victim had been several moves ahead while they'd congratulated themselves on their cleverness. What do we do? Victoria's voice had lost its earlier confidence. We accelerate everything. No more gradual approach. No more careful positioning. Monday morning, I file for emergency divorce proceedings with immediate spousal support. We claim Richard is engaging in financial abuse by restricting your access to marital assets. Financial abuse? Victoria's tone sharpened with interest. That sounds legally compelling. It is, Marcus continued. We paint him as a controlling husband who uses money to manipulate and intimidate. The frozen accounts become evidence of his abusive patterns, not defensive strategy. More rustling papers, the sound of a legal mind shifting into full attack mode. I'll need you to document instances of emotional abuse, financial control, intimidation tactics. Think back over your marriage. Anytime Richard made financial decisions without consulting you, anytime he questioned your spending, anytime he used money to influence your behavior. That's going to be difficult, Marcus. Richard's never been controlling about money. If anything, he's been too generous. Then we reframe generosity as manipulation. His providing for you becomes evidence that he created financial dependency to maintain control. Every gift, every luxury, every comfortable lifestyle choice becomes proof of his systematic isolation strategy. The breathtaking audacity was impressive in its scope. They were planning to weaponize 25 years of my dedication and generosity, twisting every act of love into evidence of abuse. What about Emily? Victoria asked. She's not going to automatically take my side. Her psychology training makes her skeptical of everything. That's actually perfect, Marcus's voice carried the satisfaction of a man who'd found his closing argument. Emily's hesitation to support you immediately becomes evidence of how thoroughly Richard has manipulated family dynamics. We position her psychology training as something Richard exploited to turn his own daughter against her mother's emotional needs. You want to make our daughter a witness against her father. I want to save your financial future, Victoria. Emily's professional training means her testimony carries extra weight. If she expresses any concern about family dynamics, we frame it as expert psychological opinion confirming Richard's manipulative patterns. The plan was elegant in its comprehensive evil: turn the daughter's professional skepticism into evidence against the father, reframe every act of love as manipulation, transform defensive financial protection into proof of abuse. Monday morning, Marcus continued, I file for emergency restraining orders preventing further asset movement, immediate spousal support of $15,000 monthly, and temporary exclusive occupancy of the marital home. By Wednesday, we'll have him painted as an abusive husband who needs court supervision to prevent further financial intimidation. And if he fights back, then we escalate. Harassment charges if he contacts you directly. Stalking allegations if he investigates our activities. Emotional abuse claims if he questions any of our accusations. Marcus's voice carried cold satisfaction. The beauty of domestic abuse law is that denial becomes evidence of guilt. The harder he fights, the more controlling he appears. Victoria's laughter held no warmth. Poor Richard. He has no idea what he's unleashed. 25 years of playing the trusting husband. Time to teach him that nice guys finish last. They spent another hour coordinating their stories, establishing secure communication methods, and preparing for what Marcus called total legal warfare. Every conversation, every interaction, every financial transaction would be documented as evidence of my systematic abuse pattern. The conspiracy had evolved from simple asset grab to character assassination campaign designed to destroy not just my finances, but my reputation, my relationship with my daughter, and my standing in the community I'd helped build for 3 decades. As Victoria finally left the building at 9:30 p.m., her phone was already buzzing with Marcus's first strategic text: remember, you're not an angry wife anymore. You're a terrified victim finally finding courage to escape your abuser. The war had officially begun. Saturday morning found Victoria and Emily at Café Luna, the bistro where they'd shared monthly mother-daughter brunches for 5 years. Victoria had chosen their usual corner table, intimate, private, perfect for confidential conversations. But this time she positioned herself as a woman seeking her daughter's professional help rather than maternal support. Emily, I need to talk to you about your father. Victoria's voice carried carefully calibrated vulnerability. I think something's wrong with him mentally. Emily set down her coffee cup with the deliberate precision she used when shifting into therapist mode. What kind of wrong, Mom? Controlling behaviors, paranoid thinking. He's been restricting my access to our accounts, claiming it's for security reasons. But Victoria let her voice trail off, allowing her daughter's imagination to fill the blanks. How long has this been going on? Months, maybe longer. I just attributed it to work stress. But yesterday, he completely froze me out of every account we share. I couldn't even buy lunch. Emily leaned forward, her psychological training engaged despite personal involvement. Mom, financial control can be a form of domestic abuse, but it can also be legitimate financial management during business transitions or legal concerns. What's Dad's explanation? The question was too direct, too professionally neutral. Victoria had expected emotional support, not clinical analysis. He claims it's routine account security, but Emily, I've been married to him for 25 years. This isn't routine. This is punishment for something. Punishment for what? Victoria hesitated. How much could she reveal without exposing her own conspiracy? I think he suspects I've been questioning our marriage. Maybe he's trying to intimidate me into staying. Mom. Emily's voice carried the patience of someone who'd spent years treating manipulative patients. Are you telling me Dad is financially abusing you to prevent divorce, or are you telling me you're considering divorce and Dad is protecting assets? The distinction cut too close to truth. Victoria shifted tactics. I'm telling you that your father has been exhibiting concerning behavioral changes. And as a psychologist, I thought you might have insights about what's happening. As a psychologist, I'd say that major behavioral changes usually have identifiable triggers. What happened 3 days ago that might have caused Dad to suddenly restrict account access? Victoria's mind raced. Emily was too well trained to accept emotional manipulation without evidence. Every question revealed the gaps in Victoria's victim narrative. I don't know what triggered it. That's what scares me. But Emily was studying her mother's face with clinical detachment, reading microexpressions and verbal inconsistencies with professional skill. Mom, are you asking for psychological advice, or are you asking me to take sides in a marital conflict? The blunt question shattered Victoria's manipulation strategy. Her daughter wasn't going to provide the emotional support that would validate her victim narrative. I'm asking you to help me understand what's happening to our family. Then I suggest you have an honest conversation with Dad about his concerns instead of asking me to psychoanalyze him based on your interpretation of his behavior. Victoria left the cafe 20 minutes later, furious at her daughter's professional detachment and worried about the implications. If Emily refused to automatically support her mother's claims, the victim narrative would collapse under professional scrutiny. Meanwhile, 40 miles away at Sterling Construction's headquarters, I was receiving intelligence that would reshape the entire battlefield. Jim Morrison's call came at 10:15 a.m., just as I was reviewing weekend job site reports. Richard, thought you'd want to know. Marcus Thompson's got problems brewing with the State Bar Association. Word is they're investigating his handling of contractor payments on the Mitchell case. What kind of problems? 3 subcontractors filed complaints about non-payment last month. Thompson collected fees from his client but never distributed payments to the trades. Classic trust account violation if they can prove it. I set down my coffee, mind immediately calculating the implications. How serious? Serious enough that the Bar Association scheduled a hearing for next week. Thompson's scrambling to find $23,000 to make the subcontractors whole before the investigation concludes. $23,000. The exact amount Marcus owed, according to my research. Jim, would those subcontractors be willing to discuss their experience with Thompson if someone from the construction community reached out? Absolutely. These guys are furious. Thompson promised payment for 6 months, always had excuses, always blamed delays on his client or court procedures. They're small operators who can't afford to absorb those losses. I spent the next 3 hours making strategic phone calls. Bob Martinez from Martinez Electrical, who'd been waiting 8 months for $7,400. Steve Chen from Chen Plumbing, owed $9,200 since last October. Randy Foster from Foster Roofing, still waiting for $6,500 from a job completed in November. Each conversation followed the same pattern, professional courtesy calls from Sterling Construction checking references before potentially hiring Thompson for legal services. Each contractor eager to share warnings about Marcus's payment practices, ethical shortcuts, and professional unreliability. By 1 p.m., I had documented evidence of Marcus's systematic pattern of using client trust accounts as personal banking, violating state bar regulations and misleading subcontractors about payment timelines. At 2:30 p.m., I called the State Bar Association's ethical complaint hotline. I'd like to file a formal complaint about attorney misconduct, I told the intake specialist. Marcus Thompson has engaged in a pattern of client trust account violations and has made misleading representations to construction industry professionals. The complaint form asked for detailed documentation. I provided contractor names, amounts owed, timeline of misrepresentations, and evidence of Marcus's systematic abuse of client funds. 3 additional contractors agreed to serve as witnesses if needed. By 4 p.m., Marcus's law office was receiving calls from the Bar Association about expedited investigation procedures and mandatory hearing attendance. His professional reputation, the foundation of his conspiracy against me, was now under formal ethical review. At 4:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Mike Rodriguez. Thompson just left his office carrying 3 boxes of files, heading toward his car. Want me to follow? No need, I typed back. I know exactly where he's going. Marcus would be driving straight to Victoria, panic overriding his usual caution. The conspiracy that had begun with confidence and careful planning was about to become a desperate scramble for survival. Let them panic. Let them make mistakes. The real war was just beginning. 2 days of professional crisis had given Emily time to process everything she'd learned. The drive to Sterling Construction's headquarters felt like traveling toward a reckoning she'd been avoiding her entire adult life. My office building stood solid against the April sky, brick and steel and honest workmanship, everything Marcus's glass tower pretended to be but wasn't. Sarah, my secretary for 8 years, greeted Emily with the warmth reserved for family members who actually showed up to job sites and company picnics. He's expecting you, honey. Go right in. I stood when she entered, reading her body language with the careful attention I'd learned from watching Victoria's moods for 25 years. But Emily carried herself differently, professional posture, clinical distance, the bearing of someone who'd made difficult decisions. Dad, we need to discuss what's happening between you and Mom. Her voice held the careful neutrality she used with troubled patience. I've spent 2 days analyzing the situation, and I need to understand your perspective. What's your mother told you? That you're exhibiting controlling behaviors, financial manipulation, possible emotional abuse. She wants me to support her victim narrative using my professional credentials. She sat across from my desk, hands folded precisely. Show me the evidence, Dad. I need to hear what you heard. I hesitated. Once I played that recording, there would be no protecting her from the truth about her mother and husband. But Emily was 30 years old, a licensed psychologist, capable of handling reality. I pressed play on my phone. Victoria's voice filled the office. When the old fool finally signs the papers, we'll have everything we planned for. Emily's expression didn't change for the first minute. Professional detachment held as she listened to her mother mock 25 years of marriage, heard Marcus calculate legal strategies for maximum financial damage, absorbed their cold discussion of timeline and asset division. But when Victoria said, 25 years of playing the devoted wife, Emily's composure cracked slightly. Her hands clenched once, then relaxed. The recording ended. Silence stretched between us like a bridge neither wanted to cross first. How long have you known? She asked finally. 6 days. I overheard this conversation at your house last Tuesday. And you've been, what? Building a defense strategy while pretending everything was normal. Something like that. She leaned back in her chair, processing. Mom asked me to evaluate your mental state. She wanted me to provide professional opinion that you were exhibiting abusive patterns. What did you tell her? That I couldn't ethically assess someone without proper evaluation, that her claims seemed inconsistent with your established behavioral patterns. Emily's voice carried a note of anger now. She tried to use my training as a weapon, Dad. Against you and against professional standards. The weight of betrayal, not just mine, but hers, settled between us. I'm sorry you've been dragged into this, sweetheart. I'm not. Her tone sharpened with resolve. I'm glad I know the truth. The question is, what happens now? I studied my daughter's face, seeing strength I'd helped build but independence I couldn't control. That's your choice, Emily. I won't ask you to choose sides. I already have. She stood up, decision made. I choose truth over family loyalty. I choose evidence over emotion. And I choose to support the parent who didn't try to manipulate my professional ethics. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by concern. What about Marcus? What about him? Her voice went cold. My husband participated in a conspiracy to financially destroy my father while using my psychology practice as cover. That marriage is over. Emily. Dad, I'm not making this decision in anger. I'm making it based on character assessment and behavioral evidence. She moved toward the door, then paused. I'll testify honestly about family dynamics if needed, but I won't be anyone's weapon, including yours. I understand. Good, because there's one more thing I need to do. She left my office with the determined stride of someone who'd found moral clarity in a situation designed to destroy it. 20 minutes later, she'd be walking into her own home to confront the men who'd betrayed not just me, but the professional ethics she'd spent years building. I sat alone in my office, surrounded by the evidence of 35 years of honest work, and felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began: hope that truth might actually matter. Emily's key turned in the lock at 7:30 p.m., and Marcus's startled expression revealed he hadn't expected her home early. He sprawled on their living room couch, legal documents scattered across the coffee table, a half-empty whiskey bottle within reach. "We need to talk," Emily announced, setting her purse down with deliberate precision. Rough day. He didn't look up from whatever case file he was pretending to review. The Barrett deposition got postponed again. "I know about the conspiracy, Marcus." His head snapped up. The careful lawyer's mask slipped, revealing something desperate underneath. "What conspiracy?" "The one where you and my mother planned to financially destroy my father while using my psychology credentials to support false abuse allegations." She remained standing, maintaining advantage. "I heard the recording. Every word." He set down his whiskey glass with exaggerated calm. "Emily, whatever you think you heard." "I didn't think I heard anything, Marcus. I heard everything. The asset documentation, the timeline for filing in June, the plan to paint Dad as an abusive husband using fabricated evidence." Her voice remained steady, clinical. "You and my mother have been planning this for months." Marcus stood up, shifting into litigation mode. "You need to understand the context. Your father has been exhibiting controlling behaviors. Stop. Don't insult my intelligence by trying your courtroom manipulation on me." Emily moved to the coffee table, gathering files with deliberate precision. "I'm a psychologist, Marcus. I recognize gaslighting when I see it. You're not reframing reality for me the way you plan to reframe it for a judge. Emily, listen to me." "No, you listen to me." She turned to face him fully. "I spent 2 days trying to understand why Mom would suddenly claim Dad was abusive when I've never witnessed a single concerning behavior in 30 years. Then Dad played me the recording of your strategy session, and everything made sense." Marcus's expression hardened. "He recorded a private conversation without consent. That's illegal in Iowa." "Actually, it's not. Iowa is a one-party consent state, and Dad was present during your conversation, making it completely legal." She smiled without warmth. "You should know that, counselor. But I suppose you were too busy planning financial fraud to review basic recording laws. This is about your father manipulating you. This is about you and my mother conspiring to destroy an innocent man for financial gain while attempting to weaponize my professional credentials." Emily picked up her purse. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow morning. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight. You're going to throw away our marriage based on your father's version of events. I'm ending our marriage based on your own words, documented in a legal recording." She moved toward the door. "You tried to turn me into a tool for character assassination, Marcus. That's not something I can forgive. Emily, please. We can work through this." "No, we can't. Because working through this would require you to possess integrity, and you've proven you have none." She paused at the doorway. "The State Bar Association investigation into your trust account violations. Dad filed those complaints. Your professional reputation is about to collapse alongside our marriage. You should have chosen your conspiracies more carefully." She left him standing in the wreckage of his plans, the lawyer who'd thought he was playing chess suddenly realizing he'd been outmaneuvered at every turn. Monday morning arrived with the cold clarity of consequence. Victoria woke in our guest bedroom, the separate sleeping arrangement that had begun as her convenience now feeling like exile. She'd spent Sunday locked in her room, making frantic phone calls to Marcus and emerging only for whispered conversations that ended when I approached. I'd slept surprisingly well, considering the war about to begin. 35 years of construction work had taught me that preparation mattered more than worry. Every asset was protected, every vulnerability addressed, every contingency planned. At 7 a.m., I put on my Navy suit, the same one I'd worn to sign the Morrison Municipal Center contract. Armor for a different kind of battle. Victoria appeared in the kitchen at 7:30, already dressed for war in her black Chanel suit and pearl earrings. The costume of a woman preparing to play victim in court. "Richard, we need to talk." Her voice carried none of its usual manipulation, just exhaustion and defeat. "I agree. My attorney will be contacting your attorney today." "My attorney?" She laughed bitterly. "Marcus can't represent me anymore. Emily left him Saturday night. Did you know that? Our daughter made her own choice based on evidence and ethics. You turned my daughter against me." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "You poisoned her with your version of events. I played her a recording of your actual words, Victoria. You poisoned yourself." She gripped the kitchen counter, knuckles white. "What do you want, Richard? You've frozen the accounts, destroyed Marcus's career, turned Emily against her own mother. What's your endgame here?" I poured coffee with steady hands, offering her none. "I want exactly what you and Marcus wanted: asset division, legal separation, and moving forward with our lives. The difference is, I'm doing it honestly." "Honestly? You call sabotaging Marcus's career honest? I call filing legitimate ethics complaints with documented evidence honest. Marcus sabotaged his own career by stealing from client trust accounts. I just made sure the State Bar Association knew about it." Victoria sank into a kitchen chair, the fight draining from her. "So what happens now? Now you hire a competent attorney who doesn't have financial crimes pending. We negotiate a fair divorce settlement based on actual Iowa law, not Marcus's inflated fantasies. You get what you're legally entitled to, nothing more. And if I fight you, then the recording of your conspiracy gets entered into evidence, along with documentation of the $47,000 you funneled to Marcus without my knowledge, and your claims of abuse get destroyed by your own words." I set my coffee cup down. "Your choice, Victoria. Fair settlement or scorched earth. But choose quickly. My patience expired 6 days ago." She stared at me like I was a stranger. Perhaps I was. The trusting husband she'd manipulated for 25 years had died the moment I heard her laugh about playing the devoted wife. "I'll call an attorney today." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Good. Have them contact Thomas Bradley at Morrison Legal. He'll be representing me." I picked up my briefcase. "I'm moving out this weekend. You can keep the house until we finalize property division." "But Victoria..." She looked up, mascara already smudging from tears I couldn't tell were real or performed. "If you try to use Emily as a weapon, if you make false allegations to authorities, if you do anything except negotiate this divorce honestly, I will make sure every construction wife in your social circle knows exactly what you said about me on that recording. Your reputation matters more to you than money ever did. Remember that." I left her sitting in the kitchen we'd remodeled together 15 years ago, surrounded by the ruins of the life she'd plotted to steal. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized in Judge Morrison's chambers. No dramatic courtroom showdown, no allegations of abuse, just cold legal negotiation between competent attorneys who understood their clients' vulnerabilities. Victoria received the house, half of our joint savings, a lump sum settlement of $2 million, and 3 years of spousal support totaling $15,000 monthly. Fair compensation for 25 years of marriage under Iowa law. What she didn't receive: Sterling Construction, the offshore accounts Harrison had helped me protect, the rental properties titled in my business name, or any claim to future business earnings. Marcus's amateur reconnaissance had cataloged the visible assets while missing the real wealth. Marcus's legal career ended 6 weeks after the divorce filing. The State Bar Association found him guilty of multiple trust account violations and suspended his license for 3 years. By then, his practice had collapsed, his reputation destroyed by client complaints and contractor testimonies. Last I heard, He was working document review for a firm in Des Moines at $40 an hour. Emily's divorce was simpler and swifter. No children, limited shared assets, and Marcus too professionally destroyed to fight. She'd returned to her maiden name and thrown herself into her psychology practice with renewed purpose. We met for dinner once a month now, just the two of us. Father and daughter rebuilding trust that Victoria's conspiracy had nearly destroyed. "How are you doing, Dad?" she asked over coffee at our regular Italian place, the one that reminded us both of happier family dinners before we'd known the truth. "Better than I expected. The new condo is quiet, and I've been focusing on work." I smiled. Morrison asked me to bid on the county courthouse renovation. $22 million project. "That's wonderful." She squeezed my hand. "You deserve good things, Dad. After everything." "We both do, sweetheart. You made the right choice, even though it cost you." "It cost me a marriage built on lies." I gained clarity about who people really are. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "I saw Mom last week. She wanted to have lunch and reconnect." "How did that go?" "She spent an hour explaining how circumstances forced her into poor decisions, how she never meant to hurt anyone, how she deserves another chance at our relationship." Emily's expression was carefully neutral. Not once did she take actual responsibility or acknowledge that she tried to use my professional credentials to destroy you. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd consider rebuilding our relationship when she was ready to have honest conversations about her choices instead of performing victimhood." She met my eyes. "I'm not holding my breath." We finished dinner talking about her practice expansion and my upcoming construction projects. Normal conversation between two people who'd survived betrayal and chosen truth over comfortable lies. As I drove home to my condo that evening, past the house I'd built with my own hands, past the life I believed was real, I felt something unexpected: peace. Not happiness, not yet. But the solid foundation of knowing I'd fought for truth and protected what mattered. Victoria had taught me an expensive lesson about trust and human nature. But she'd failed to destroy me, failed to manipulate our daughter, failed to steal the empire I'd built with honest work. In the end, the conspiracy collapsed under the weight of its own dishonesty. And I was still standing, older and wiser, ready to build something better on ground that wasn't poisoned by lies. The recording on my phone remained saved in 3 separate secure locations. Not as a weapon, but as a reminder: trust carefully, verify everything, and never underestimate the power of truth when confronted with calculated deception. The game Victoria thought she was winning had ended with her receiving exactly what the law required and nothing more. Sometimes justice wasn't dramatic courtroom victory. Sometimes it was simply ensuring that honest work and genuine integrity prevailed over manipulation and greed. I'd built an empire once. Now I was building a life, smaller but authentic, surrounded by people who'd proven their character when tested. That was worth more than any amount Victoria could have stolen.